The FIA has been urged to change the red flag rule after the chaotic Brazilian GP, Williams in danger as major crashes cost them over $3 million, and Red Bull rivals respond to cheating allegations. Do consider subscribing. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Sauber has signed Gabriel Bortoleto to partner Nico Hülkenberg in the 2025 Formula One season, the veteran and rookie effectively teaming up in the future Audi squad. Bortoleto had been courted by the Hinwil-based outfit for some time, with his ties to McLaren as an academy member the main obstacle to a deal. McLaren team principal Andrea Stella, however, made clear that he wouldn't stand in his protégé's way if there were a chance for him to clinch a race drive. Sauber therefore made the move for the 20-year-old Brazilian, having announced earlier on Wednesday that incumbents Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu were set to leave the team. This is one of the most exciting projects in motorsport, if not in all of sports, Bortoleto said. Joining a team that combines the rich motorsport history of Sauber and Audi is a true honor. Beyond simply being a member, I aim to grow with this ambitious project and reach the pinnacle of motorsport. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity given to me by the team and for the chance to work alongside an experienced driver like Nico. Both programs have a proven track record of nurturing young talent, and I am confident that together we will write our own success story. Bortoleto has impressed in the last 2 years, winning the FIA F3 championship as a rookie in 2023. The Invicta Racing driver is now leading the Formula 2 standings, with only 2 wins to his name, but his top 6 consistency proving crucial. Gabriel has already demonstrated in the junior categories that he has what it takes to be a winning driver. Mattia Binotto, COO and CTO of Sauber Motorsport, pointed out. We are very pleased that he will become a team member of Sauber and Audi. Together with Gabriel, we are on a journey towards success, and we will evolve into a unified force to shape a new era for Audi and motorsport. Nico and Gabriel represent the ideal combination of experience and youth, positioning us strongly for the future. Chairman of the Sauber Motorsport Board Gernot Dellner added, led by Mattia, Audi's Formula One project is making great progress in many areas. The signing of the second driver is another milestone. We are currently witnessing a generational shift in Formula One, with young drivers immediately making an impact. By signing Gabriel Bortoleto, we have secured one of these top talents. His signing underscores Audi's long-term strategy and commitment to Formula One. Sauber is currently going through its first pointless Formula One season since 2014, with the team's best result being Zhou's 11th place finish in the Bahrain season opener. The peculiarity of the free tire change that is allowed under Formula One's red flag rules has long been a source of frustration to drivers. When the situation crops up, like it did in Brazil last weekend and at the Monaco GP in May, those who are caught on the wrong side of things bemoan the sheer randomness of it. In Monaco, it was all about how the hard compound starters were compromised by the first lap red flag that allowed all the medium runners a free switch to the hard. At Interlagos, George Russell, Lando Norris, and Charles Leclerc were all left rueing what they had lost by switching to fresh inters as worsening rain arrived, while those that carried on in tricky conditions got a free tire change after Franco Colapinto's huge crash. The apparent luck of the draw is something that time and again gets criticized, and yet no one has come up with the fairer solution. Back at the 2021 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, Norris was running 6th early on when he made a stop under safety car conditions for Mick Schumacher's accident, which dropped him to 14th. In theory, it was about playing the long game, as those ahead of him that did not stop would need to do so under full race conditions later on, so lose more time. However, his plan fell flat when a red flag was brought out, which handed everyone ahead of him a free stop and left the Briton stuck down the order. Speaking afterwards, his criticisms of things were similar to what he said on Sunday night after Brazil. Of course, I'm always on the bad end of it, so it probably sucks more for me than anyone, but I think it's just a very unfair rule that should be taken away, he said. I think they should change it to one mandatory pit stop with 2 different tire sets needed to be used, and then I think that's acceptable. But this just ruins everything, to be honest. You put so much effort in for it to be taken away for some stupid rule. But while the unfairness aspect is the thing that annoys drivers the most, last weekend's race at Interlagos has put in focus another factor that is slightly more worrying. It is that, in a wet race like Interlagos where conditions are worsening and there is the potential for a red flag, drivers are almost encouraged to stay out on far from perfect rubber much longer than they ideally would. McLaren's Oscar Piastri, who stopped under the VSC conditions triggered by Nico Hülkenberg's off, said that the rain that was coming down had left the track treacherous, but the lead cars obviously felt it worth the risk of staying out. I don't think we expected it to rain as much as it did, and then honestly, the toughest part of the race was behind the safety car, trying to stay on the track, said the Australian. I think it kind of exposed a bit of the issue we have with the wet tire, when everyone is begging for a red flag but refusing to go on to the wet tire because it's so bad. A pretty dangerous situation to have cars literally struggling to stay on the track behind the safety car, but it's not really anything new. Hopefully we can try to at least change it now. Race winner Max Verstappen, whose victory was made easier by the red flag situation, admitted that things were right on the knife edge as he stayed out, but there was no way he was going to stop. When some pitted the rain was coming, we stayed out, which was very sketchy, explained the Dutchman. And then I saw Esteban Ocon in front of me flying, like 4 seconds a lap faster, and I was like, I'm just happy to keep the car on the track. At one point it was just, we need a red flag. It was just undrivable, even on extreme tires. Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur, who had pitted Leclerc early but had dropped him into traffic, conceded that the issue teams face is gambling on staying out and not crashing. For sure you can say at the end of the day, if you stay on track, waiting for the red flag, it is the right call, he said. But if you crash, you look stupid. McLaren team boss Andrea Stella said that, with conditions worsening, there was a safety aspect to the situation, and that while there were competitive gains to be had by staying out and hoping for a red flag, in his mind there was only one course of action he preferred. Speaking about the Brazil podium finishers who all stayed out, Stella said, I am here congratulating them on their decisions. But personally, I am not very comfortable to leave a car out there that has tires that are pretty worn with that amount of water. Without the red flag, we would be commenting on a different race. The way to stop drivers taking the gamble and pushing on with unsuitable tires would theoretically be solved by not allowing the free tire change that is allowed in the regulations. If drivers knew that a red flag would not allow them a free swap, then decisions on which tire to commit to would be based purely on which is most suitable to the conditions, and not so much about gambling and sticking it out when conditions are too dire in the hope of being saved by a stoppage. But the red flag rules are in place for safety reasons and not competitive ones. It has long been accepted that changing tires has to be allowed under red flag conditions because of the risk of debris from accidents causing punctures or other issues. Forcing drivers to stick to their current tires when there is a chance they could have run over broken carbon fiber of other parts on the track or been involved in an accident themselves would be an incredible safety risk and lunacy to have in the rules. There have, however, been numerous suggestions in the past of ways to potentially improve things and make it fairer. One idea that would best work for dry races to avoid the potential for a free stop would be to allow teams to change tires in the stops. But if they wanted to, it would have to be for the same compound. This scenario would prevent what happened in Monaco and also ensure that drivers which had stopped to switch compounds under full race conditions were not unfairly punished. However, it would not have avoided penalizing drivers in Brazil because the Inter is ultimately the best tire for the rain. Because by the time the full wet is brought into action, normally visibility is so bad that racing does not take place. Another idea could be to allow the teams the option to change tires if they are damaged, but if they do so, they have to pull themselves out of the race order and drop to the back. That way, there would not be an incentive to stay out longer than necessary in tricky conditions. Because ultimately, if there is a red flag, the disadvantage could be greater if you need to change rubber. And if you feel you are still on the right tires, you can keep them on and take your stop later. Or what about Norris's suggestion after Saudi 2021 of tweaking the sporting rules to demand that each driver makes a mandatory stop under normal race conditions, irrespective of a red flag? All these ideas are things that have been discussed, and drivers have their own opinions about what can be done to make it better. But unfortunately, F1 has never moved things forward much. Asked after Monaco whether he had some hope of the red flag tire rule being revisited by teams and the FIA, he said, I don't know. There are many things that they have not changed, probably because they don't listen to the drivers. 5 months his words still appear to ring true. The Brazilian Grand Prix began with significant pre-race confusion when Aston Martin driver Lance Stroll lost control of his car during the formation lap and was unable to start the race. This incident led to multiple teams and drivers facing inquiries from the FIA for various infringements. One affected team was Mercedes, After the race, representatives from both Mercedes cars were summoned by the stewards due to pre-race tire pressure infringements, which ultimately resulted in a fine. Mercedes has since revealed the details surrounding the incident. The race start at Interlagos was delayed for about half an hour due to Stroll's car being stranded. During this time, FIA technical delegate Joe Bauer discovered that both Mercedes cars, numbers 63 and 44, had tire pressure adjustments made between the 10-minute and 5-minute signals preceding the restart. Bauer noted that tire pressure adjustments occurred while the wheels were still attached to the car. In his official referral, he stated, "As this is in contradiction to TD003N, items 2, C, and 2, H, I am referring this matter to the stewards for their consideration." In the team's post-race debrief, Andrew Chauvelin, Mercedes trackside engineering director, explained the circumstances that led to the pressure error. The issue arose when we received the message for the restart, which came just 10 minutes before the race. The tires must be fitted to the car 5 minutes prior to the race. This meant we had only a few minutes to get the tires down to the car, attach them, and have them checked by the FIA. Unfortunately, that timeline did not align well. He highlighted the challenges posed by the unique pit lane layout in Brazil, where the garages are situated high above the pit entry. To access the car, we had to bring the tires down from a considerable distance. In that rush, our mechanics worked quickly to deliver the tires, but there was an added complication. Chauvelin explained that the tire set they called for was not on the racks, but instead on wheelie boards for ease of transport, and it had not been bled down to race pressures yet. The engineers were requesting different tire pressures, while the tire technicians scrambled to ensure all sets were correctly prepared. Unfortunately, those sets had not been finalized. As they hurried to fit the tires on the car, they were racing against the critical 5-minute deadline, which carries a severe penalty if not adhered to. "We had to get the tires on the car and start bleeding them, but we ran out of time," Chauvelin noted. However, the main issue was not the adjustment of the tire pressures, but rather that there was insufficient time for the FIA to conduct proper checks on the tires that were fitted to the cars. "The FIA was satisfied that the tires were at the correct pressure," Chauvelin said. "The problem was that the scrutineer was not present to supervise the bleeding process before the tires were fitted, which led to us being called to the stewards." In the end, the Mercedes team was fined $5,000 per car, totaling $10,000. According to Chauvelin, the fine was reasonable considering it was a procedural issue. The FIA accepted that there was no sporting advantage gained from this, and that we complied with all tire pressure regulations. The penalty was imposed solely for the procedural oversight, with the mitigating factor being the limited time available to complete the necessary checks. Though a small error, this incident underscores the importance of adhering to procedures in Formula One. The penalty was only given for a procedural issue with a mitigating factor that there was not the time available to get them down there and get the checks done before they had to be fitted. A small error, yes, but in Formula One, adherence to procedure is everything, but chaotic turned out to be the better description. 5 drivers crashed in Sunday morning's qualifying with Franco Colapinto the first into the barriers, while Carlos Sainz, Lance Stroll, and Fernando Alonso also couldn't keep their cars on the track. The hardest hit, though, was Alex Albon's as he lost it on the rundown to turn 1 and hit the barrier hard with the front left. That spun the car around, and he hit again with the rear before bouncing off the barrier, such was the force of the impact. Bits of carbon fiber, the rear of the car shattered, the side pods not faring much better, and the front left wheel hanging on by its teether, causing over $800,000 worth of damage according to F1 Maximal.nl. Williams did not have the time to fix Albon's extensive damage, and he was forced to sit out the race. The team did repair Colapinto's car in time, but alas, his race ended on lap 32 when he crashed while the field was running behind the safety car. He lost control of the Williams in the wet, spun, and hit the barrier with the front left of his car. His tally went from one front wing and nose, rear wing, front suspension, rear suspension to double, while the FW46's side pods were also damaged. All in all, approximately $190,200. On a weekend in which the entire field racked up a reported $5,000 and $30,800 in repair bills, Williams' alone was $2,296,800. Colapinto's second crash capped a disastrous weekend for Williams, with team principal James Vowles revealing there is a lot of work ahead to make sure they have enough parts to go racing in Las Vegas. The nature of Formula One is that you can have some of the most incredible feelings and results, as well as some of the lowest moments that you can feel within a sport, Bowles said. I think it's fair to say this weekend is the second of those two. We've had 3 incredibly large crashes in just a few hours from one another and have a tremendous amount of work to get ourselves back on top of our spare situation before we go to Las Vegas in just a few weeks' time. We must go to every single one of these weekends now and deliver everything possible, whilst making sure we are still looking ahead towards 2025 and 2026, because that, as I've said all along, is where our goal is truly set. It's all about getting the foundations right as we go towards that 26 region. That doesn't make today any less painful. Far from it, I'm hurting right now. But actually, I wanted to watch that race to the finish to make sure I remember today, because this isn't what I want us to be feeling in the future. But it was just the parts or the cost that hurt. Williams' rival Alpine shot up from 9th in the Constructors' Championship to 6th as they outscored everyone with a double podium that could net the French team $30 million in prize money. Williams dropped from 8th to 9th. Our rivals, Alpine, were quick in the race, no doubt about it, Bowles said. They deserved those positions, but they scored a huge bag of points, putting them back up into a very high championship position and demoting us back down to 9th. I never give up until it's time to give up, and that won't be until we're in Abu Dhabi and the checkered flag has dropped. We have 2 fast drivers and we have a fast car underneath us. Damon Hill, the 1996 Formula One world champion and Sky F1 pundit, has expressed his support for FIA steward Johnny Herbert after Max Verstappen accused the British media of bias. Hill, who recently referred to himself as Verstappen's lucky charm in an Instagram post, took to his Instagram stories to defend Herbert's right to an opinion, stating that he has earned it more than most. While the F1 2024 World Championship initially seemed like another clear victory for reigning champion Max Verstappen, the rise of Lando Norris as a potential title contender has led the Red Bull racing driver to voice concerns about bias within the British media. These accusations are extensive. Ahead of the Brazilian Grand Prix, Verstappen targeted Sky F1 commentator Damon Hill, who had remarked that fair racing was not part of the Red Bull driver's repertoire. During the pre-race press conference in Brazil, Verstappen responded to Hill's critiques, saying, "I don't listen to those individuals. I just do my own thing. I'm a 3-time world champion. I think I know what I'm doing. Honestly, I have my opinions. I don't need to share them." As the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend unfolded, Verstappen's father, Jos Verstappen, also criticized what he perceives as British bias. He questioned the conflicts of interest posed by former driver Johnny Herbert, who is now both a pundit and an FIA steward. The elder Verstappen wondered how someone in a position of power within the FIA could publicly share personal opinions about drivers. In response to the criticism, Damon Hill addressed the situation again on Instagram. He posted, "Bye-bye Brazil," and "Bye-bye Championship Showdown." But after all the stops and starts and some bad humor earlier in the day, it turned out nice again for Max and Red Bull after a masterclass performance reminiscent of the likes of Senna, Schumacher, and Hamilton. I've never seen them look so triumphant. It's been a long time coming since their last win in Spain. Oddly enough, that was also the last race I attended with a Ski Sports F1. So maybe I'm a lucky charm after all. He ended the post with a winking emoji. Hill continued, "Now all that's left is the Constructors' Championship. But I don't care as much for that. It's all about the Drivers' Championship for me. They are the stars, the ones who lay it all on the line." Red Bull boss Christian Horner directly called out Hill during the post-Brazilian Grand Prix show on Sky F1. After Hill praised Verstappen, Horner laughed and said, "I think we're going to have to get that on record that Damon said something nice." Hill remained active on Instagram, sharing a graphic from Motorsport.com that featured an image of Johnny Herbert along with a quote stating, "Everyone has an opinion. Even Martin Brundle has an opinion. Why can't I when I'm not at the track?" Hill added his own caption to the story. "JH has a right to an opinion. More than most, actually." This was accompanied by 4 clapping emojis and a thumbs-up emoji. It appears that the exchange of words between Verstappen and the British media will continue, at least for the foreseeable future. That's it for this video. I'll see you around.